town, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Agriculture is people.
Definitely.
What do the other 99% do? What options do they have available to them because they don't have to worry about where their food comes from?
Low prices squeezed essentially every farmer in America. But you farmers did what you always do. You kept on keeping on and you persevered.
Hello and welcome to the Four Corner Ag Podcast. My name is Caleb Wirtz, representing the Colorado FFA Association and serving this year as your state FFA president. Here I've got Maverick Lighty with me.
I am currently serving as your 2021 Colorado State FFA treasurer. This is our first podcast.
I know, isn't it crazy?
I'm excited, dude. I'm an avid podcast listener, and a month ago, if you asked me if I'd be sitting in the seat right now recording this, I'd think you're lying. So this is pretty cool.
I agree. It's definitely a new opportunity. It's something that we've never seen done before, especially not from our state association.
Yep.
Not something that's ever been needed. This year is looking a little bit different, obviously, and so getting into this, I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for our members, especially.
We've been put in a very unique situation here as state FFA officers. Usually we're on the road about 265 days out of 365, and with this coronavirus pandemic, that's just not happening. And so we had to find new ways to reach our members, and this is one of our ideas. I'm pumped for it.
Oh man, I remember we were having the conversation, Maverick and I had this about, probably a month ago. We were sitting there talking and just coming up with ideas, brainstorming, and Maverick was listening to a podcast because we were on the road driving, just talking to each other on our phones and everything, and he says, dude, what if we had our own podcast? And I said, okay, what would it be about? And he said, well, Colorado agriculture sure is diverse, isn't it? And you know what? It's got four corners. And what did you say to that, Maverick?
I can't remember. That was weeks ago. So that and for all you guys' information, I have a terrible short-term memory. So don't expect me to remember a lot of this.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, Colorado agriculture is extremely diverse. I mean, you've got the Eastern Plains on one side, and then you have the Western Slope on the other. And as far as our climate goes, that just kind of leads us down a path to where we can do a ton of different things with agriculture in our state. And what we want to do with this podcast is try to give you guys a visual of how diverse and highlight some of the different things that happens within Colorado agriculture and maybe some of our bordering states down along the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of open this up to you guys as members, especially. Even if you're not a member and you're listening, we encourage you all to reach out to us on our social medias or on our emails. Those will be posted with this link, so however you find this link to listen to this, the links to those social medias and everything should be there as well. But we encourage you guys to reach out to us, and if you'd like to be a guest, get out there and say, hey, I'm doing something cool in agriculture. We're in this part of Colorado, and I want to be on. I want to be highlighted. And that's one thing we really want you guys to understand is that you are doing something different, and the best thing we can do is help you guys get your names out there and have some fun and help educate the rest of the state on it. Because honestly, up until, I don't know, probably this year, I didn't even know much about Western Slope agriculture until now we've got some great people from the Western Slope on our officer team as well, and I'm learning a lot.
Definitely. And I think one of the other goals that we could accomplish with this podcast is, a lot of people think that agriculture is just sows, cows, and plows. And it's not. There's a ton of science, there's a ton of math, there's a ton of technology that goes into it. And I hope that later on down the line, and as we get this ball really rolling, we can really highlight some of those things about not only Colorado agriculture, but agriculture in general.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Colorado is only, well, technically 150th or 152nd, including all of the different states and associations that FFA is involved with. So, I mean, there's so much more agriculture out there, but you got to start small to learn more. So we're starting with our little state of Colorado, even though it's really not that physically little, but that's kind of the plan. I guess we can move into our guest speaker today. Maverick, who do we got on?
You read my mind. Today we have Mr. Justin Homm in the southeastern corner of Colorado on the Great Plains. Do we have him on? Is he live?
No, wait, hold on. Justin Homm and... Justin, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
I can't complain. Better than I deserve.
Awesome, man. I'm excited for this. Just as I was telling Caleb, this is gonna be fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very good. I'm excited as well. I think it's a great opportunity, and it's really cool that you guys are starting this and doing it. I think it's fantastic.
We sure appreciate that.
It is an honor to have you as our first guest. I know that we're talking about a little bit about your job and what you do with agriculture. I think I know, if I can remember right, you have something to do with animal nutrition, specifically beef. Is that correct?
That is correct. I actually, a lot of people might not even know that you can do this, but I have a PhD in animal nutrition. So I work for an animal health company, and so I get to do research on beef cattle, and I'm very specific in the feedlot sector. So that's mainly where I work, and so I get to do a lot of different things. As far as research studies go, I get to even help all the way back in our R&D process, where they're looking at molecules that would improve health or nutritional status or growth. And so I get to interact with those R&D people that are trying to come up with new products that will help and support agriculture. And so I get to do that, and I get to go out to feed yards and help them implement the products that we currently have on the market, and do research and collaborate with a lot of the producers across the great state of Colorado, but even outside of there, in Texas, Kansas, Nebraska, and even all the way back into the Midwest. So it's kind of an interesting job.
So I should be calling you, instead of Mr. Justin Homm, I should be calling you Dr. Homm. Is that right?
You can, if you like. Justin is fine as well.
All right. Awesome. Well, I heard you. One of the little interesting things I kind of thought of as we're diving into this. Have you ever worked with Wagyu? And if you have, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I actually have. So my kind of career path, I was an FFA, so I am an alum of Burlington, Colorado's FFA program, and went through and got my degrees, and I went to work for Elanco Animal Health, and then I went to work for a company called AgriBeef, and they're based in Idaho and Washington, and they raise Wagyu cattle. They're probably the largest producer of Wagyu cattle, and so I did get to work with those while I was doing their nutrition work as their staff nutritionist, and now I'm back with Elanco. But yes, we did do some work with Wagyu cattle.
Man, that's awesome. As the first time that I heard about Wagyu, I thought it was only exclusive to Japan. And so the fact that we have that in the United States, and I don't know how long we've had that in the United States, but I thought that was just awesome. And you learn something new every day. What kind of a diet do these cattle have? Is there anything special that we feed them, or do we just silage and hay and grain?
So really their rations are not a lot different. I think that that's pretty consistent kind of across the board. There might be some little differences here and there that one operation might use. The unique thing that AgriBeef had, at least, was they fed potatoes, which is kind of interesting. But Idaho is a big potato state, and there's a lot of byproducts from potatoes, and those are byproducts from the industry that's making French fries for fast food restaurants, those type of things. And there's lots of byproducts that come out of those plants. And cattle are really interesting. You always think of like pigs as kind of a garbage disposal. Mm-hmm. Cattle can actually really use a lot of different feedstuffs. Everything from grass to corn, and kind of everything in between. Cattle can actually get some good out of, which makes them really unique. And it's one of the passions, I guess, that I have in agriculture is cattle, and I would say that it's just a fantastic industry.
Man, that is cool. I don't know about you, Caleb, but I've never heard anybody that feeds their beef potatoes.
No, absolutely. It interests me because, well, one thing is one of my passions is beef and meat science. So I think it's interesting that they would even consider feeding potatoes. It makes sense. I guess we as humans sure enjoy potatoes and fries and whatever else different forms potatoes can come in. So I guess it makes sense to feed cows potatoes. But one thing I've got a question about is that with those Wagyu beef, I've done a little bit of research into them, and in Japan, there's a specific farm. It's apparently the best Wagyu that you can possibly get, and what this farm does in Japan is feeds olives and like olive mush, and basically what they do is just pamper the heck out of these cows. Now, my question is, Justin, what in the world would olives do in the way of feed for amazing beef, good marbling?
It's a good question, and I would say obviously I'm not familiar with feeding olives directly, but I am familiar that olives have oil, right?
Yep.
Because you use olive oil in cooking, and so as a nutritionist, you think of things not by ingredients like a potato or an olive or corn. You think of them as nutrients. Okay. And so what I would think of if you said olives is I would think that they would possibly be high in fat, and you need fat in the ration to balance the diet. That is kind of the main thing from a nutritionist that you're looking for. It's someone to make sure that we're feeding the animals a healthy diet, that they meet all of their vitamin and their mineral and their energy, all of their nutrient requirements. And so that would be, I guess, my answer to the olive question. Okay. The other interesting thing with a potato is if you think of a potato is basically pure starch, right? And when you make a French fry, it's starch and fat. And those are two ingredients that we like to feed in the cattle industry to make cattle fat and get them ready for harvest.
Wow.
That's so cool. I actually just looked up like what a Wagyu steak looks like if it's been fed olive pulp, and it looks like a sponge. It's the coolest looking steak I've ever seen. Like, look at that, Caleb. If you guys are listening right now, if you pull out your phones and go look up a Wagyu olive fed steak, and it is just insanely marbled. That's so cool. I wonder what that does for as far as the taste goes. If you're feeding beef potatoes and olive pulp, there's a difference between grain-fed and grass-fed, and those two look different. I wonder what that does for the taste of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know specifically again on olives, but what I can say is the taste of a steak. What makes beef unique versus other meat of poultry and pork is the inherent flavor that you get from grain-fed cattle, and that stems from that fat content that's in the meat, intramuscular fat, which is what marbling is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have those steaks that have a lot of fat in them, they are very intensely flavored, and they very much taste like beef. Beef has its own unique flavor, and that's what makes it beef.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Beef is definitely one protein that, in my experience, it changes with what you feed it, just like you said. And I guess that's the beauty of your job, is that you get to kind of see what's going to happen, or at least research. You said you were involved with a couple research projects with, I assume, pertaining to beef and different things that they feed them. Is that correct?
Yeah. So specifically, what I would be involved with would be our products that are already approved. That are to get a product approved, it has to go through the governmental regulatory agency of the CVM, the Center for Veterinary Medicine, and so you have to do a lot of research trials to get it approved. And then once it's approved, then that's where I can come in and do some research on those products. So I do research specifically on the products that we support and that we sell to feed yards to increase animal well-being, animal health, animal performance, and those type of things.
That's interesting. So, with your job, what does your day-to-day kind of schedule look like? What are you doing every day? And are you working from home? Are you flying out to places, visiting places? What's that look like?
So it's really variable, which is kind of what I like. I would say in the COVID era, which we're living in right now, it has been less travel, right? I mean, You've had a lot of travel bans and things depending on states. So I haven't traveled as much. But I would say on a normal year, once we get through COVID and we get back to a quote unquote normal, I would say that I'm probably traveling 3 to 4 days a week on average, and I'm going to customers. We do a lot with data and analysis of data. So we have a database that feed yards can turn in their performance data of cattle and health and all of that, and we do an analysis and we kind of compare, a single feed yard to the peers that are around them in the same region, and we say, you might be doing good in this one area, and in this one area you might need, to adjust some of your management practices to try to improve there. The one great thing about the beef industry is they are very scientifically driven. They use, a consulting veterinarian, a consulting nutritionist, and want to get better and get better at what they're doing, whether that's animal health, animal handling, performance, those type of things. They're always interested in trying to do better, and that's kind of where we come in and we help them a little bit with that. And then they'll have specific questions about products, which may pertain to how much of this product should I be feeding and those type of things. And that's come in and help them answer those questions.
So you're to kind of sum up your job title, you're telling people what to feed their beef. Am I right?
So from a ingredient standpoint, that wouldn't be correct. So they would have a consulting nutritionist that either works for them or is an independent nutritionist that comes in and helps them formulate rations and make sure that they're meeting all of those nutrient specs.
Okay.
And then I would be working with that nutritionist and the feed yard directly, management in the feed yard, on how they're implementing our products and how they're doing as a whole as a business. Okay. I guess I would say.
Okay, so you're more of like the in between between your company and the feed yard and that nutritionist. Then is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. You're the expert on your product. That is exactly what you do. Is you make sure you're an expert on that, and then you can go from there and help that feed yard. Okay, that makes sense. That raises a question for me. I know that you're down in the southeastern kind of part of the state of Colorado, and one thing that we are wanting to kind of highlight, obviously, with this Four Corner Ag is what is happening in the state of Colorado, in your part of the state, in your section of agriculture. So what does Colorado agriculture look like in your eyes as this consultant almost?
So I guess in general, I would say that this year was an interesting year. It was an interesting year because of COVID, right? That has thrown a lot of issues up in the market, especially when it comes to the price of beef. The price of beef, where farmers are selling it to packers, and then the price of beef where packers are selling it to consumers, right? And so that's been an interesting one. The other one that's specifically in, I would say, is kind of general. I would say all of Colorado and maybe even all of the U.S. would be in that boat. Specifically, as we look into Southeast Colorado, I would say that this was an extremely dry year down here. And so it's been a bit of a challenge for farmers, right? I mean, because we're working with feed yards which are depending on farmers to produce grain, to produce fridges or hay and that type of stuff that goes to feed yards. So it has a bit of a challenging year in this area of the state. We've been really dry, and I know a lot of cow-calf producers down in this area have had to reduce herd size and sell off some cows because they just didn't have enough grass to support them. Mm-hmm. So that's always a bit of a challenge. Usually a fairly dry area anyway, but this year was a fairly dry year. We do have irrigation out of the Fort Lyon Canal that comes out at about Mahana, and it irrigates a lot of acres. I believe it's about 98,000 acres that irrigates.
Wow.
And we didn't have a lot of water this year. We didn't have our normal amount of water. And so, again, that puts stress on farmers, which in turn puts stress on feed yards out in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know if you would know this, but have you guys seen a decrease or an increase in production coming to the feed yards themselves? Are we seeing less numbers of cattle being sold and then being in those feed yards?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think most of the feed yards that I deal with are fairly full as far as capacity wise. The challenge gets with sourcing ingredients, right? I mean, that's where the true set challenge comes from. This time of year, guys are putting up silage, and so they're getting some of that roughage that they need in their rations. But corn, they just probably are not going to have as much local corn, which means that they're going to have to go outside and get corn from a bigger area, and maybe even, a lot of those would get some rail corn in from back in Iowa and Illinois. And we've heard even reports out of there where they've had some wind issues. You guys might have heard some of that, where it's laid down a lot of corn in Iowa. And so those are the type of things that kind of keep those guys, at least in the feed yard industry, at night.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm sure you're not necessarily an expert on corn markets or anything like that, but we've obviously not seen great corn markets this year or the past couple years. Just like you said, all of that blown down corn up in Iowa and the drought coming through pretty much this whole eastern side of Colorado, and as we get even more easternly, is that kind of affecting how you're able to do your job, like sourcing corn and things like that?
Well, I don't really get into specifically sourcing corn, right, or anything. That would be more of the consulting nutritionist's role of what feedstuffs to feed. But really what it comes down to is the price of corn. When corn is lower, in general, feed yards like that better, right, because the ration price is largely made up of corn. The challenging part is what is the value of the beef going out on the other end. If that's high and the price of corn is low, that's a good opportunity for them to make some money. The challenge is that both of those are low, and so that puts a strain on the system for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So in your job, and in really all of Colorado agriculture, we are seeing these low prices of the corn. Our corn markets are low. Really, a lot of our grain markets are low. And that being put into our beef, and then our beef prices aren't what they should be either. What does that do in relation to your job? How does that affect you? Do you need to push more product? Do you need to figure out new feed yards to be going to? What does that do for you?
So the other thing that I probably didn't explain either would be we have sales representatives. So I am not a sales rep. I'm not tied to sales of our product. Mm-hmm. I'm there to support those products, and where that gets into kind of what I do. From your question is, they might ask, with corn prices being low and beef prices being low, do we want to take cattle to heavier weights? Do we want to take them to lighter weights? And those are some of the things that we can answer with some of the data that we collect. Mm-hmm. Is we can kind of run different scenarios for them and say, okay, normally you take this 750-pound steer out to 1,400 or 1,430 pounds. Maybe we want to shoot for a little bit lower or a little bit higher, given your specific inputs. And so that is where we can come in and help with that. There is sometimes a question of, okay, so if beef prices are low, how should we adjust our levels of product X, whatever that might be, that we're selling to them? And so we can have those conversations and figure that out as well.
Mm-hmm. So what exactly is the product that you are selling?
So specifically in the feed yard, and again, I'm on the nutrition side. So we have, I think there's 7 of us that are on the beef feedlot side, mm-hmm. and we have some veterinarians as well that would talk, mainly animal health products and those type of things. But we sell vaccines. Okay. So for health programs, we have a line of vaccines. We have a line of implants. So implants would be for growth promotion to get cattle to grow more efficiently. And then we would have nutritional products. The biggest one that comes to mind that Elanco is kind of known for is a product called Rumensin. And so Rumensin improves, it kind of picks out the better bacteria in the rumen, and that's better for fermenting feed and promotes the growth of those and kind of inhibits the growth of some others. And that allows cattle to be more efficient. Without getting into a lot of the science, that's really, really what it is that it makes them be more efficient with every mouthful of feed that they're consuming.
Awesome. You said implants, and that sparked my interest. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about those? Like I'm picturing implants that you're like getting into your body, but I'm sure you're talking about like little metal capsules maybe that release something into that beef. Is that correct?
Yeah. So an implant is it's a little pellet that dissolves and it goes under their ear. And so you would figure out the correct implant that you want to use, and you would put that under their ear. And there's two primary ingredients that I would say that promote the animal to grow faster and better. And that would be TDA, which is trenbolone acetate, and the other one is estradiol. And so estradiol is a synthetic estrogen, and TBA is a synthetic testosterone. And so we give those, and they've been around for a long, long time in the beef industry, and we use those to basically promote the animal to grow more efficiently and faster.
Dang, that's cool. You know, I knew that those were around, but I didn't exactly know like the purpose of them, like what they did. That's pretty cool.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Maverick here, I'm sitting here. I know we just graduated from high school, and I know that one of the big things is when you're in high school, I was big into weightlifting. Mm-hmm. And the big joke, and obviously nobody ever did it because it's very illegal, and maybe Justin, you can chime in on this, but a lot of the big thing to say was like if you were getting big, if you were lifting a lot of weights, they would ask, "Man, are you on that trenbolone? Are you taking those steroids?" And I guess that means it really does its job. Obviously, myself and none of my friends or anything in school ever actually took any trenbolone acetate, but I guess that means it really does its job. Am I right, Justin?
Roids, bro.
Well, and it's different. It's a different deal than what you're thinking of steroids that humans would take illegally, right? These are products that have been approved through the FDA and have a lot of scientific research behind them to make sure that they're safe. Number one, for the animal, right? Because we don't want to cause harm to the animal. And then number two, that the animal that is harvested and goes into the food chain to feed people, that it's a safe product.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of research that goes in behind those to make sure that they're both safe for the animal and for human consumption.
Right. That's one thing I understand is, from what you've said and from my previous knowledge, is that one of the big things we like to highlight as we do research is that it's safe for our consumers, and that's one of the big passions of the entire agriculture industry. I understand that, and I understand being a part of that. But do you get into the safety portion of that whenever you're doing your research and everything? We're kind of going back to that, but when you're doing research, is that one thing that you highlight? Are you looking at levels of outputs on different things that come from your feeds? I understand not a lot of anything that goes into your feed is going to go into the consumer necessarily. It's not like you're going to be eating corn if you're eating a steak, but what does that look like?
Sure. So specifically on all of our product, I would say before they're approved, they have all this whole big package of safety studies that they have to do. They have to make sure that it's not affecting the animal or the meat that is going to be consumed. And there's a lot of different things that go into that. We also have environmental assessment to make sure that product that goes in the animal, that it's not going to make its way into the manure that could go onto a farmer's field that could cause a problem downstream, right, in the production of farming and agriculture in general, making sure that of those products affect anything, long term that we don't think of directly with the animal, but we have to make sure from an environmental standpoint that we're not hurting the environment or hurting a farmer cropland. We count on him at the feed yard level, the farmer, to produce crops that can use back in the feedlot.
Wow. That's
You know, I sure am glad that there are people that are smarter than me out there, because I never thought of that.
Oh, absolutely. You're very right, Maverick. That's something that I definitely haven't considered either, I guess. That's probably something you consider almost every day, though, huh, Justin?
Well, yeah, I mean, we do. I think the other thing that's cool just about agriculture in general is I believe that when you're thinking about, and again, I'm not an expert on pesticides and herbicide use on land, but there's people that make sure that, doesn't happen, and that it causes some kind of effect on the stream. Agriculture is really good at making sure that they have the right answer.
Yep.
I do think one of the things that we do a little bit less of is, right, you guys are young men that came through FFA and you came through high school, and I don't think that we do as a good job in agriculture of bringing that to the very user, right? That mom that's buying a steak for her family, that we convey to her that here's all the safety things that we do to make sure that steak is healthy and nutritious for her family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we're definitely passionate about coming into this next level of FFA and being advocates for agriculture, right? Is getting the word out there about what goes into our food and what eventually ends up in the hands of the consumer. What is a way maybe that you're thinking, and this is just in your mind, but what is something that we can do both as members listening and anyone else who's listening, and then even Maverick and I, how can we better convey what goes into our food to average consumers that may not understand that?
I've thought about that in the past, and it is a challenge. And here's why it's a challenge: is because people like me, I'm on the science side of things, right? I'm on the science side, and I love science and data and numbers, and what speaks to me, I guess that's what my passion is. But I doubt if science and numbers is that consumer really cares about, right? I want to know that it's safe, but I want to hear all the jargon behind it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that young people can do via probably social media and some things like that. I'm not very big on social media just because I didn't grow up with it, right? It wasn't a part of the way that I was raised, and along later, and so I try to be on social media, but I'm probably not as good of an advocate for agriculture as I could be. And I think that's where maybe some of the younger generation comes in and can be advocates for ag. And a lot of it takes time, and it takes developing and knowledge of what's going on in industry, whatever industry it is in agriculture, and trying to reach those end users that care about things like that, but they probably don't respond well to a 50-page scientific journal article, which is what I deal with more in my life. Right? So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can tell you right now from a standpoint of someone who would probably rather go drive a tractor than sit down and read a 50-page article. I definitely understand that. That's something where, have you ever, I guess I've considered it, but have you ever considered turning your data into a visual representation that we could easily label food with or put out on social media? Is that something that would even be possible to do?
I don't think that it is, and I think that our company is actually doing some. They're doing some monitoring, right? They will monitor social media and try to look at what the conversation and what's shaping that conversation. A lot of times, it's things around antibiotic use is a hot button issue in agriculture, in animal agriculture today. So there's companies that are monitoring that, but I don't know if they're changing the conversation, right? They're monitoring it to say, well, there's a conversation that's going on about antibiotics that's positive or negative, and that's kind of where it ends. And so the challenge is how and when do you step into those conversations and say, look, here's some good, solid information that's not written in a way that's has too much scientific jargon in it, I would say.
Yep. Something where we don't want to confuse the consumer, or even for the consumers that understand all that scientific jargon, not something where we want to consume their lives with the big words, but rather with our quality products, right?
Right.
Little side thought here. 5 years ago, if you would have told me that Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook would be so important to advocating for agriculture and just our lives in general, how we function and how we find information, I never would have believed you. And it's crazy to me how far we've come in that aspect.
Yeah. Oh, man. Social media is extremely important. And Justin, you said you're not super involved with that, and I kind of don't blame you because it can sure get complicated and crazy easily. But I understand that it can be also extremely beneficial. But I guess we can kind of move into, I want to hear, we love hearing about all of this great stuff that has to do with your job specifically and all of the crazy, awesome science that you've done, because I love the science. But we kind of want to just get to know you as well and what your life looks like in your job. And I guess my first question is, what is, and I don't know that you've had many crazy experiences, but what is one of the crazier or better memories that you've got in your job? What does that look like?
That's a good question. I think that there's been a lot of great memory travel and getting to know customers, right? And there's lots of examples of getting to know customers on a level that's more than just, hey, I work for an animal health company. Getting to know as people, and I think that's the great thing about agriculture is that you hear words that are thrown out like factory farming and some things like that. And when you go to larger companies or smaller companies, the people that work for them have a passion for agriculture. That's the thing that I love is that you can say, well, it's a big company, but the people that work with animals, that work with their veterinarians, they care deeply about animals and they're passionate about what they do, and they love their job. And so it's a little bit of a misnomer. I hear animal or factory farming or something like that, big agriculture, because agriculture is people, and I would say that that's probably the one of the coolest things that I learned over my career, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Agriculture is people.
Definitely.
That'll hit you home right there. Agriculture is people. And you're exactly right. And from my standpoint, man, I just, that's what I love is the people. And you get to meet all sorts of crazy people probably and just get out there and market yourself and your company. But back home, I guess I'm curious, back home down in Southeastern Colorado, are you very involved in, say, 4-H or FFA now, even as you're an alum? Is there any way that you get involved with livestock down in there, or what does that look like?
Sure. So I'm actually on the McClave. My kids go to McClave.
Okay.
And so I'm on McClave's Ag Advisory Board. So we're kind of a board of community members that are put together to help and support FFA and OAG in McClave. And so I'm definitely involved there. As far as 4-H, yes, I've got 3 kids that they all showed seniors this last year. So we actually even help a family in town that wanted to do it, but didn't have a place to keep their livestock, and so they keep their steers at our place, and they can work with them and do all of that. So, yeah, still involved in animal agriculture that way, and hoping that hard work and that great work ethic comes through 4-H and FFA will rub off on my children.
Oh, wow.
So it's very near and dear to my heart.
I love that.
That all just comes back to agriculture is people. One of the things that I think is so cool about agriculture, little side here, is that in one way, shape, or form, everyone is involved with it. Everyone is impacted by it. Mm-hmm. And it is so incredibly important to our society.
Oh, yeah. You're so right. Man, agriculture is awesome. I tell you what. That's really great to hear. Justin, we sure appreciate as state association members, and we're on this officer team and everything. It's good to hear that even as alum that you are still involved in helping our members continue their agriculture experience. And one thing I know from doing research and just knowing of you and knowing you is that you were also a state officer in sort of our positions at one point, weren't you?
I was actually state treasurer. So
look at that, Maverick.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That's our 98.
97 to 98. That was
ancient
one other interest.
Is what that was.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness.
I'm just kidding.
One other interesting fact is that my dad was the state treasurer. Now, I don't remember the year. It would have been in the 60s, I think.
Oh, wow.
But he was a state treasurer as well.
Wow. That's crazy to me.
Long line of treasurers here.
Yeah, look at that. I tell you what. Oh, boy.
Stationed by the University of Washington.
Oh, absolutely. That's...
Well, we're coming up on about, 55 minutes here. So I've got one last question for you. What is the worst part about your job? What's an experience that you've had or something that you just dread? Or do you love it all?
Yeah, I really do. I really do love my job. I would say that one thing, when you're young, when in the industry, I really did like travel. Once you have kids, you get married and you have kids, travel sometimes is not as much fun as it used to be. But it's been really interesting this year because I haven't traveled near as much, right, with COVID and all of those things. But I would say of the things that I don't like leaving my county. I always do enjoy coming home. So that would probably be the one thing that is sometimes a bit of a challenge.
Love-hate relationship. Yep.
Oh, man.
I get that.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other questions, Caleb?
I guess I don't know that I have any more questions, but we sure appreciate you coming on, Justin. It's an honor and privilege to get to talk to you, and we sure appreciate you kind of sharing some knowledge and experience with both Maverick and I and our members, everyone else that's listening. The biggest deal, again, going back to your little quote here, I already wrote it down, but agriculture is people. You know, we sure appreciate you getting on here and just sharing. You know, that's exactly what agriculture is. You're involved in a whole nother aspect of agriculture that I've not been involved with, and some of our members I'm sure would love to be involved with now. And so we just appreciate it, and we're glad to have you on.
I learned a ton today.
Oh my goodness, so did I.
I had fun doing it.
Oh man.
Absolutely. It was I appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, well we'll talk to you later. Alrighty, thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Folks, that is Justin Homm from the southeast corner of Colorado. And we're just about to finish our first podcast.
You know,
That was awesome. I had so much fun.
that's crazy. You know, one thing I want to kind of say here is it's pretty obvious, but Maverick comes from the McClave chapter. Maverick comes from the McClave chapter, and well, that means that Mr. Justin Homm here, or I should say Dr. Justin Homm, right?
Dr. Justin
That was
Homm.
funny. You can call me Justin. Yeah, he was on your ag advisory board, I guess, then, right?
Yeah.
So you know Justin fairly well then, probably, don't you?
Yep. I spent a little time with him, and, you know, he got getting ready to run for a state office and everything. He helped me practice a little bit there. Him and his wife Shelby Homm being past state officers. Great people.
Yeah.
Great people.
Absolutely. Little fun fact there, and this is not to take away from Mav getting to grow up around the Homm family and everything, but Shelby, Justin's wife, is actually my first cousin. She was a Wirtz until, she married Justin. They were on the same officer team and everything, and that was, what did he say, 97, 98?
Ancient history.
Ancient history. What is that, 22 years ago?
Yeah.
My goodness gracious, that's 3 years older than I am.
You know what's crazy? 1990 was 30 years ago. 30 years. That doesn't,
That's a little crazy.
yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
1990 was 30 years ago. I'm 19, so I guess that would be 11 years older than me. But yeah, it's a crazy thing to think about. I sure appreciated his input on, beef in general. Getting to see how the markets have kind of affected the beef industry this past year, especially with COVID, and just getting to see, really what it looks like for the consumer, right?
Yeah.
He gets to make sure that it's safe for all of them, and that's something Maverick and I want to make sure you members understand, is that we are here to be ag advocates, right? And so one thing we got to make sure we always specify is how safe agriculture and our products are. We have to make sure that we go through the USDA and pretty much any other government agency that makes sure that the consumer is safe, right? So that's one thing we always make sure of, is we are always putting out a safe product, right?
Yep. Aside from providing for the world, providing sustenance, I would say that's probably agriculture's number 2 main concern, priority, is making sure that our product is safe for the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely.
One other thing that I took away from that conversation there was, having going into high school as a freshman and having a breeding beef SAE, but not really growing up in a ranching family, or having that base knowledge of beef and the beef industry, is just how much technology goes into it.
It's crazy.
So cool.
From my experience in meat science and meat judging and everything, they actually have machines, and I'm sure he's dealt with them slightly, is they've got machines that basically what it does is it takes a picture of your ribeye area,
Yeah.
and it'll tell you how much marbling's in it and your ribeye area itself, and then so it quality and yield grades the beef from basically one picture. It's pretty insane. Rather than having a inspector go through and make sure he sees every single carcass that goes through the plant, he's just looking at those pictures that the computer is taking, basically. So there's still an inspector always there, because that's one of the laws, is an inspector always has to be there anytime that there's any slaughtering going on. But it's just crazy, the technology. Oh, man.
And back in ancient history, that used to be done by hand.
Yeah, well,
I bet that saves a ton of time, too.
oh yeah, it does. I'm sure it does. I mean, even as a meat judge, I went to Indianapolis for meat judging in 2018, and so it's not super ancient history necessarily, but it is hard. I will tell you all as members and everything, I was not good at quality grading. Just terrible. I was so bad at quality grading. I don't know how I made it to nationals, but my team, I guess, they must have had sore backs because they were carrying it for me, because I was just not good at quality grading. But the rest of the competition was a lot of fun. I guess let's work into kind of closing this out, Maverick. I sure appreciate all of you members who tuned in today. We're getting ready to close up our first episode, which has been crazy, just like you already said, Maverick. And it's we just really appreciate you guys and your support and jumping on here. Be sure to tune in. We're going to try to be posting. I don't know that it'll be super consistent, like every single day or whatever, but we're going to be posting a couple a week probably. If there's any specific people you guys want to hear about, go ahead and let us know on our social media platforms, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, or Snapchat. If you'd like to be a guest, if you've got your SAE going and you think it's something cool, something new, maybe it's just just any SAE, and you want to be highlighted, we love to do that as well. That's something we want to do, is bring members in. And so just get a hold of us in any of those ways, and we're happy to have you guys on.
Reach out to us. We want to get to know you guys, because that's not an opportunity that we'll have a whole lot for this year in person.
Yep, so. Absolutely. Hopefully, come about January, we'll see what it looks like. But for now, we want to make sure we reach you guys as much as possible online and virtually. And so, I guess, I'll tell you what, Maverick, I think that's about it.
That's it.
Good job.
Awesome, indeed.
Man, I'm proud of us. Alrighty, well, we thank you guys, and we'll see you on Four Corner Ag next time.